Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development. Good afternoon. Welcome back. Well, it's morning here, but whenever you listen to this, I hope you're doing well and amazing. We have a special guest on our podcast today, which I'm super excited about. He flew all the way from Arizona to be here with us. Not only is he a distinguished guest and an incredible business leader, but he's a friend. And I know every time we get together, there's a lot of laughs, there's a lot of fun, and we have a great time together. And that's the things that I cherish most. But today we're going to dive deep into his background and what he's done and what he is doing. And this show is geared towards ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things, because along our journeys, we're able to model different people and what they've learned along the way. And it's my hope and my partner's hope today that you will gain some insight on an incredible man who's doing incredible things and is just an awesome human being. So I'll go through this bio real quick and we'll get into it. But our guest today is the CEO of Better Agency. He is with co-founder, and he is transforming the way independent insurance agencies grow and serve their clients. Better Agency has become one of the renowned names in the independent insurance agency space, and I believe that they've been running that for about 5 years now, if my memory serves me correctly. He'll probably correct me when I introduce him. But before that, he co-founded 2 successful companies that provided solutions with integrations for small businesses in different verticals, and he's been in the tech space for some time now. What's an interesting thing is that he actually also played tight end in the NFL, which we'll get into later, which I guess wasn't supposed to, which I don't know if we could say it on air, but we're going to get into that too, which is pretty cool. So his work ethic, his drive, his success, his grit is really geared towards who he is today and his background. I know he's got a fund, an investment fund for different businesses that he's purchasing, and really getting into a lot of acquisitions, M&As, and just as savvy as it gets in regards to just business acumen. So whenever I need to have some advice and where to go, I call Will and I ask him for just to kind of pick his brain a little bit. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm super excited to introduce to you Mr. Will Shaw. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome, man.
Yeah, thank you.
By the way, you look like you could still play tight end. So
I appreciate it.
I wouldn't want to get hit. I mean, let's go ahead and say it.
Before I was tight end, I was a safety.
Well, there you go.
And between the 4 years that I played safety for the last 2 years of high school, first 2 years of college, I think I had 10 or 12 career interceptions, but I had almost double that in TV timeouts for injuries. So I was a headhunter. So that's kind of what I did.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
mean,
That's
safety,
translated into business, man. You're still, still taking souls.
I mean, at safety, you could put a hit on somebody and they're not expecting it.
Yeah. I mean, I was a larger. I was
You're
as big as our
safety.
linebackers. Yeah. So I probably played my freshman sophomore year at 215.
That's terrifying.
that's
That's terrifying.
safety vibes. I mean, it's like John Lynch vibes. You're just not.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably at the tail end of like being a big safety in terms of what today's game would actually allow.
Okay, that's what I thought. Like, what's a safety these days? Like, they're just.
Yeah, I mean, some of them could be tall, but most of them are going to be sub 215. You're not seeing a big,
Yeah.
like
More like a
220. Yeah, you're not seeing that
Buck
very
90.
often. Yeah,
Just lightning fast.
200. Yeah, something like that. That's just where the game's
You were
gone.
215. Were you lightning fast?
No, I wasn't lightning fast.
Even more reason why you don't want to get hit by you.
Yeah.
Like if I do catch your ass, it's going to be ugly.
Yeah. Your best hope was try to run by me, but I was pretty smart about that. I knew where my weaknesses were.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's funny.
I will say though, I wasn't lightning fast, but moving to tight end, it obviously switched things. I played at like 240 to 245, but pro day and combine, I think I ran 4.57 and 4.56.
Damn.
Which was top 3 at my position group. So not a fast safety, but a fast enough tight end.
Wow.
That's amazing. Goodness gracious. Well, let's start there. Like, that's kind of like that fun fact that's just so fun to be able to throw that, flag in the air that you played in the NFL, man. What is it? What does that actually look like? Is it exactly what people think? Or is it different? Or does it depend? What is bring us into that for a second of what that experience is.
Yeah, I think there's aspects of it that probably are exactly what people think about it, and there's other aspects that aren't. There's most people that play in the NFL are, 100,000ers. Most of them, including myself, are not millionaires. We're all playing on minimum deals, which sound great, right? Like if your minimum deal as a rookie is $300,000-400,000 a year, that sounds really good. 50% of that goes to taxes. Another percentage of that goes to agents. Certain states, and you can guess which one they are, have the jock tax of an additional tax amount on top of that. So I really appreciated the games I played in Florida because there was no state tax.
So does that work? Hold on. So I didn't know that.
That's
Same
it's
with golf.
100%.
Where do you
Same-
play?
It's
I
where you
remember
play.
that from the days of golf.
My rookie year, this is how financially illiterate I was at like the age of 21, is after my rookie year, I went to go file my taxes at H&R Block. And they're like, sir, we can't do this.
Were you playing in the NFL?
Yeah, I'm playing in the NFL and I'm going to H&R Block to file my taxes. And they're like, sir, we can't do this. You have to file in 13 states. And we have no idea how to do this. And so like that was like, all right. The only thing I knew was like try not to spend money. That was my goal. Was like I didn't have a car. So I gave my car to my little sister because she was in college in North Carolina. So I lived in Philadelphia my rookie year at the Marriott Hotel for a 6-month stretch.
Holy
racking up points. And I would just bum rides basically from other players and personnel guys and through a charter or whatever. And because they would pay for me to live at the Marriott. And so I was like, all right, I'll just stay here.
Yeah.
Because I never knew when I was going to get cut. Because like one week I'd get cut, I wouldn't have a job, I'd go back to Ohio, and then they call me back and I go back to Philadelphia. So I was like, well, I'm not going to pay for a place. They're going to pay for me to stay here.
Wow.
So I never tried to spend money. But yeah, taxes, it was a fun, wild thing to try to figure out.
Where'd you play college football?
So I played 1 year in Arizona at Mesa Community College, and then 3 years at Youngstown State, Northeast Ohio.
Jim Tressel, the legacy of Jim Tressel.
Yeah, Jim Tressel was there in the 90s, and then he went to Ohio State, and then he came back as the president of Youngstown State. I think right as I was leaving Youngstown,
I love Jim Tressel.
Oh yeah, he's a legend. I mean,
as a Michigan guy who hated Ohio State, I hated Ohio State, but I always had an affinity for Jim Tressel.
Yeah,
and he couldn't beat Michigan. That didn't factor in as much, but he was just a total class guy.
He was a player's coach too. You talk to anybody that played for him, they really adored him, from the staff to players to people that worked with him.
Always remember that.
It's amazing. Very cool. Well, I always love your stories that you inject about your time playing out there. Like there's always just some fun, random, hilarious, story that you get to share every time we go to dinner. So it's pretty fun. It's pretty amazing though to think about playing at that level, at that high of a level, at any time period for any duration. I mean, it's just best athletes in the world just absolutely clashing every single day. It's wild. How was the workout routines, by the way? Was it harder than you think, or was it did you work harder in college than in the NFL? How does that look?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed. To be clear, that was the last year I played was 2014. So we're talking about 10 years ago. So the game has changed a lot, and it's even more regulated than it was. I wouldn't say the NFL workout routine was not harder than what I did in college. And college was probably a little bit less regulated than the NFL was. I think for some guys, maybe it is. I just think it depends on what your mindset is going into it. Like, like my mindset was like, just be the hardest worker in the room no matter what, right? Like I was a 0-star recruit. I had, everybody talks about rivals or whatever. And like, hey, this is a 5-star prospect. I was 0 stars. So I didn't have a single D1 offer coming out of high school. I went to junior college. And I got my first offer to a quote-unquote D1 school was Youngstown State, D1 AA, and I took it. So I was a 0-star recruit. I wasn't on any draft boards. I switched positions halfway through my career, went undrafted, had a 3-day tryout at rookie minicamp, and signed a 3-year contract.
Wow.
It's so amazing to me, man. Like how that just translated into what this podcast is all about, right? It's like we've talked before about, not wanting to be a 5-star and how many 5-star quarterbacks have gone on to win titles.
Share that. Give context to that. Because we just had this conversation yesterday. I don't know if it was through text with the million texts that we have every day, but like it was talking specifically to that.
The idea,
the guy,
Yogi Roth.
Yogi Roth, yeah. He's one of the commentators that became very popular on the West Coast. I forget where he played his college football. But he was a stud. So we had first got.
He wrote a book called The 5-Star Recruit, and he was talking about the statistic. The idea of there's been one 5-star recruit in the last how many years or ever to win a Super Bowl for QBs. Quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's another stat that goes into that. That is, there's a higher percentage of 0 and 1-star recruits that play in the Super Bowl every year than there are 5, 4, and 3s.
Yes.
Wow. Well, and that was my point. That was my
powerful.
point. Like, it's such a good catalyst to you leaving football and going into business, right? It's like 0-star recruit, playing for the love of the game, get to the show. I refer to those as the reals, right? There's pretenders. I was a pretender with golf. I was never a real, right? So I look at a guy like you, and it's like there's nothing that says you should have been a real except what was inside of you and the drive and the work ethic and first D1 offer, I'm taking it, because I just need a shot, right? I just need to be able to get my foot in near the pool because I'm going to push back past everybody and dive in. So I know we haven't gotten into any of your business story yet, but just the idea of an athlete with your story to get to the show, to become a real, man, it just fires me up. And for you to say, without knowing that we talk about you don't want to be a 5-star recruit, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, man, it's like you framed this up for us in such an incredible way.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. I mean, you were asking the question about what's the workout or what's the difference between college and NFL. It's like the NFL is really regulated, but in college, it goes back to that mentality of can you outwork anybody else in the room? And we used to have, I think we used to have 6 a.m. workouts, right? Or 5 a.m. I think that we did them at 6 a.m. for most of the off season. So everybody would show up at 6 a.m. to go work out, right? And everybody's dog ass tired. Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on the podcast or not, but
good.
Oh, yeah.
They're dog tired. They're dragging, whatever. Well, I went and did the workout at 5. So I went and did a whole workout with a small group of guys at 5 o'clock. So by the time everybody's rolling into the gym at 6 o'clock, I've already got the sweater off. I'm drenched in sweat. And I'm yelling at people let's get after it at 6 o'clock. And then we're going to go do an afternoon, on field workout later that day. And it's that mentality spreads through a team very quickly because I can look you in your eye and say, you're just never going to outwork me. And I know that no matter what, I never really cared whether somebody was more talented than me or not. And that's kind of the great part about football is it does end up being a one-on-one matchup in some regard. Can you win your matchup? No matter what it is, whether I'm running a route, I'm blocking, whatever it is, can I win my matchup? And I just knew that I'm going to win most of those matchups because I was willing to outwork anybody that I knew. Now, maybe there's somebody else at another school that's working just as hard, but I can't control that. What I could control is what I knew and what I was able to do. And so I just showed up every day. That was my mentality when I got there as a transfer after my freshman year is, we did workouts Monday through Thursday. Well, I did 2-a-days Monday through Thursday, and then I worked out Friday, 2-a-days, and I worked out Saturday morning.
What a savage, bro.
So when a kid comes to me at the gym, this happened a couple of years ago, he comes up to me at the gym when I was still going to the gym, and he's like, hey, how do I get in shape? How do I look like that? I'm like, brother, this is 15 years, day in and day out. I used to cry eating chicken because I was so sick of food. Because I only ate grilled chicken for 2 years. I went to the gym every day for, whether it was the off season or not. We'd finish the season, I'd take a week off and I was back in the gym getting after it. I did that every day from the time I was 13 to 24, 25.
Where does that come from?
What a good question.
It is a good question because I don't know that I know the exact answer to that. I have some thoughts maybe of where that comes from.
Was it always there?
Yeah, I think it comes from my parents. I grew up in downtown Baltimore, which is an interesting place to grow up as a kid. You see a lot. My mom worked at the hospital in downtown Baltimore, Sinai Hospital. She saw a lot. My dad worked for the government. I have 2 very supportive parents. I come from a big family. And my dad is, if I didn't look exactly like my dad, you guys wouldn't believe it, but my dad is literally 5'5", 110 pounds. My dad's also 89 years old. He was born in 1934 in the midst of the Great Depression.
No kidding. Wow.
My mom's up there in age as well. My dad had me later in life, so it was a different upbringing with a different mentality. My dad's mentality was, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Outwork everybody in the room.
Amen,
and my father's 5'5", guys. I can't make this up. But my dad has never walked in a room and not felt like he was the biggest person in the room. He just demanded that kind of respect. And I always was brought up with that. I was always brought up with the lesson that your presence and your essence demands respect. And my dad taught me that as a 5'5" guy walking in any room. And I was taller than my dad at 12, but My dad
was a giant.
My dad was always the giant, and even at 89 years old, I still kind of look at him that way, even though he's a little bit softer now and a little bit more gentle. And he watches my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old daughter every day. But he would just get on the stairs and yell at me because he wanted to always look me in the eye. He always just felt like that was him. But
damn,
I think that's kind of where it comes from.
He got on the stairs so he could look.
That's
amazing.
Yeah, but when I was 12, he had to start standing on the stairs and look me in the eye. But he always wanted to make sure he looked me in the eye.
Man, that hits because I want to come back to your mom. That hits because it's almost as if like I look at my grandfather, and you got these depression babies who are teaching these different tougher values of like grit and work ethic and manners and just this different. They're just chiseled different based upon the circumstances that they went through. But if your dad being 89 years old, it's almost as if that, well, not almost as if, it sounds as if like you took 2 generations and fused them together and you got that all your life.
Yeah, I do feel that way. Like I feel like I just had a different upbringing than everybody that's maybe my age. They came up.
Yeah. I couldn't say that any better. It's like, we talk about your age, people your age, and it's like, you have the type of upbringing that I had.
Right.
And we're 2 generations apart. You know what I mean? I'm 53 years old, you're 33.
Yeah, like my older brother's
insane.
My older brother's 55.
Totally insane to me.
By the way, you just destroyed all the viewers' minds right now. They thought you were like 36. So you just took the cat's out of the bag now.
We should do like a poll.
His skin does look like he's 36. You see that skin he's got over there? It is really nice.
That's why he brought it up, because he wanted us to say
man.
Although all you guys in Florida have nice skin, though. You guys got that humidity.
This podcast is brought to you by Red Light Therapy.
Yeah. And the translation, how so if and when does that translate? I mean, bring us up to speed to where you have this athletic background. How do you start? How do you take what you just shared, which is incredible, into the next chapter?
Yeah, I think it all kind of goes back to, like neither of my parents were athletes. We just grew up wanting to play sports. Me and my brother. My brother had a sports scholarship. My sister had a sports scholarship too.
Wow.
And
environment. So all of you guys were savages.
Yeah, and we didn't necessarily neither of my parents, played sports. It's not like we grew up doing that. It's just what we want to do. But like that mentality. The funny thing about like how does that translate into business was, I'm going in for my 3rd NFL season. I tear my abdominal wall. There's a whole story around that too, actually. Like I remember because I was cut so many times. So like I never knew if I was going to have it was great. This is back when they were handing out physical checks. It's before like direct deposit, right? So like I was just so happy every Tuesday that I got a check, right? Like I go pick up my check. I'm really happy. My mom framed my first check from the NFL. It's like, it's like $1,500 for like rookie minicamp or something like that.
That's awesome.
And, so I'd be depositing checks for the season. And so I always try to make it a Tuesday, but like, on weeks that I was cut, there's no money coming in. Right. So I never really knew how much I was making, even though there's a contract and all that stuff. So I'm training to go into my 3rd season, and I just remember no one's calling. It's like, I'm like, all right, I'll sign for like rookie minicamp. I'll go back through OTAs, right? No one calls. I'm like, all right, draft goes, OTAs go. I'm like, all right, we're 6 weeks out from camp. I'm going to get signed. 2 weeks out from camp, not signed. No one's calling. Camp starts. No one's calling. I'm like, all right. And I just remember like praying to God, like, hey, like, and I'm spending $3,000 a month at this time, like, between trainers and nutrition and just trying to stay in shape. I'm not making any money. I'm not bringing money to not bringing any money in. Like I met my wife in high school. Like, we're married at this point. Like I'm trying to start my life. And I'm like, is it time to move on from football? This is all I've known since I was 13. I had no backup plan like everybody tells you to have, because this is all I know. I'm really burnt out on football at this time because I've been going at it every single day, for the last 10 plus years. And I'm like, I remember praying to God and being like, if I'm not supposed to do this anymore, like end it for me, but in a way that I can still like live my life, because I just can't give it up. But like, I know I kind of need to for my family. And not 2 days later, I'm training at A Mountain at ASU, and I tear my abdominal wall off my pelvic bone. It's deemed inoperable. It's 12 to 18 months rehab, and that ended my football career. And I look at that as like a sign of God of saying like, hey, it's time to move on, and like legitimately answer my prayers.
Didn't know that.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I don't. I actually don't share that story. A bunch. It's kind of a weird one, but in a weird way for me, it was like it gave me permission to say, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And I walked away from the NFL, not maybe accomplishing what I really wanted to accomplish with my career, But like now I look back at it as like a 33-year-old with, with kids and a wife and hopefully a long future of life. Like I'm super grateful for my health.
Right.
Like I'm super grateful that cause I have buddies that are just not in good spots. Whether it's from head injuries or different body injuries. And I'm like, I look at the game a lot differently than I did when I was, when I was 24, it was like, I get actually the best way I could equate it to is like, I grew up boxing. Like that's what my family did. I come from like a military family. My dad was a boxer. My grandfather was a boxer. And my dad didn't want me to box after I was like little. He wanted me to learn it, but not really box. And he was like, it's a poor man's sport. He's like, when you win, you lose. He was like, the only person he's ever seen that's won in boxing is Floyd Mayweather because he never got hit. It's like, even if, a man can only take so many hits in his life before that's it. The lights kind of go out. And, I kind of look at it as like, football game, that was kind of the blessing I got is like, I didn't reach that point of taking too many hits.
Man, is that powerful?
It is powerful, man. It's like it's almost as in life, you're wanting something and you're pursuing something, and the ego thinks that you know what's best to get there. Wow. And the divine's saying, no, I'm gonna help you get there. It's just you got to trust a little bit. We're gonna take a little different path because this path, I know you think that this is good for you, but this isn't good for you. We're gonna go this way. And so these things happen in our life. We can say, why is this? Instead of saying, man, why don't I stay curious and open to the fact that this is probably what's best?
It's definitely ego driven. Like I remember, even before that, my last year in the NFL, I remember even like before entering that offseason where I got injured, I remember sitting because I kept living at the Marriott, which was probably a bad idea in hindsight.
Do you ever go back there?
No, I've never been back.
Is it kind of like the truck coffee? Is it kind of?
Yeah, it's kind of like the truck coffee. Actually, I actually only stay at Marriott's. I actually do. I was like mad I had to stay at a Sheraton last night because the Marriott was booked, but. Because they're like, it does kind of feel like home. Like I spent so much time there. It does like Marriott.
You walk into every Marriott. You've never met Jane's at the front desk.
I can't
You've never
explain
met
to
her.
you,
You're like,
like,
Jane, great to see you.
I spent so much time with the cooks at the Marriott at the Philadelphia airport, like just making Philly cheesesteaks back there.
That's the one you stayed at?
Yeah, the Philadelphia
That's
airport, the
we've stayed there
Marriott.
much.
Yeah.
I have tried to order Uber Eats there late at night one night.
Didn't
work
I
out.
literally used to sit back with the cooks.
Downstairs, right in the lobby.
I used to be in the kitchen with them, hanging out.
I know exactly what kitchen you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
hysterical.
we'd be making, they taught me how to make a Philly cheesesteak. But I remember being there and, I remember the same thing. Like this is probably the lowest point of my, maybe not the lowest point, but like a super depressed point in my life. I'm 23 years old. I'm playing in the NFL. I'm making good money. And I'm like, I'd be really happy just getting cut and going home and calling my career good and just being able to go have a beer with my family on a Friday night. Like I really craved that. Like I grew up with a really tight knit, close family. And like you're either in my life, you're either family or you're not. Like I don't have friends. Like I have family and I have acquaintances. And so like I just wanted to have a beer with people I enjoyed with. And I craved having that because I had never had that for so long.
Wow.
And so, I kind of went through that transition at like a young age at 23, 24, get injured. And I kind of have to look at myself and say, okay, I'm going to reinvent myself. I don't want to coach. I don't want to be in football anymore. I want to cut ties there. And so I try to go looking for jobs and I realize no one's hiring me because I have no real work experience. And my first job after the NFL was working at LA Fitness for like $12 an hour or $10 an hour. So I'm making $1,000 a month. So I go from making, like a weekly paycheck, on a rookie minimum deal is probably like anywhere between 16 to 20 grand a week. So I go from 16 to 20 grand a week to $1,000 a month. And so like, being 23, 24 years old, you're like, all right, this is not what I was expecting in life. And so I've got to figure out how do I go from here. That was like that's where I lost like my ego in life. And I think it's always trying to keep your ego in check in this world. But like that helped me realize how much I really needed to check my ego. Cause this is, I'm going from the top of the world to literally the bottom of the world. From an income standpoint.
Wow.
Man.
That's amazing.
So that
I
was,
didn't know that story.
yeah, I didn't either. So that was like league minimum, 16 to 17 grand a week.
Yeah. I think rookie minimum, I think my rookie year was, my first year contract, I think was 275. And then I think year two was like a little bit more than that, like 325. And then if I made it to the third year, it was like nice. It was like 450.
Wow. Which is so funny because you talk about trusting and you talk about, God saying, okay, hey, I'm going to have this injury. But then you go, man, I would have thought there would be something else in between. It's like, I didn't expect to go from 16, 20 grand a week to 1,000 at LA Fitness, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
had to be the
No
question
doubt.
at the time. Like,
Yeah.
I thought there was something else around the corner.
Well, and what's funny is like, I feel like I've kind of gone through these stages, or God's led me through these stages in my life where like, all right, maybe now I'm starting to understand it. But then I go a couple years and I look back and I'm like, no, that was just a stepping stone to this.
Yeah.
And then every time I look back like a couple years, I feel like this is it. And it's like, no, I go through like another journey. And it's like, what I've kind of like gone ahead and just realized is like, there is no destination here. It's just like a continuous journey. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really just grateful for the path that I'm on and wherever that may lead me.
I just can't imagine the mental. I mean, you know, you talk about forced to lose the ego. It's like, you know, you're 23, 24 years old, best shape you've probably ever been in, maybe to this day, I don't know. But it's like you're coming out, you're an absolute animal.
Yeah.
Coming out of the league, hurt, you know, you're comfortable to say goodbye to the sport, and you're making $1,000 a month, and whatever you felt then has translated 10 years later to where you are now, and it's just insane to me.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like that transition period of how long were you there? What was after that? And it sounds like, well, it's obvious at this point you pretty much transformed yourself into something completely different. But that process didn't happen overnight, I would assume.
Yeah, I did struggle for a while, like mentally, like losing that identity. Like a lot of people say, like, "Oh, I'm not just a football player. I'm not a golfer, or I'm not whatever my career is." I'm like, no, I'm a football player. Like that's what I did. I loved being it. I loved feeding into that. I loved feeding into I love stereotypes. I think they're funny. So I loved being like the football guy. Like, make fun of me.
I love that.
I'm not a smart guy. It's fine. Like my wife, we graduated in a large class. 800 people. My wife was number 7 in that graduating class GPA wise, and out of 800, I was probably like 720. Like I was happy with that. Like I
love it.
And same with my brother. My brother graduated top of his class, and I had better SAT scores than both of them because I was a great clutch performer, and I lived by that.
Wow.
Just what school wasn't my thing.
Can relate.
So I love feeding into that. So like when I lost football, I really, for a while, I felt like I lost like a whole identity for me. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted to do. You know, looking back, there's a lot of different maybe choices I would have done, but I wouldn't change anything that I chose because it kind of took me on the path that I'm on today. But I didn't have, I went to a small school, so it's not like I had a large booster network or referral network to fall back into, like, hey, go work into Wall Street or private equity or the financial realm, which is ultimately where I wanted to go. That's, kind of where I was always drawn. I understood finances really well. I was a finance major. I went from being on academic probation my sophomore year to being on the dean's list. Like I had to change, like I was a good student.
Literally was in there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was there. It just you had to sacrifice, you had to threaten me to take away football for me to actually want to do it.
But right lever.
Right. So, my wife was working at a company called Infusionsoft, now Keep at the time.
I remember that.
And I got to know some of the people over there really well because she was working there, and I was just looking for a job. At some point, me and my wife was probably making, this is like 2014, and my wife's probably making like $50,000 a year. And then she looks at me, she's like, "Hey, just quit LA Fitness. $1,000 a month isn't worth it. You're working the weekends. I never see you."
But you got a free gym membership. You know what I mean?
A free gym membership. She's like, just quit. So like me and my wife were living in an apartment. I tried never to touch any of the money that I made from football. That was like my rule of thumb is I just tried to save everything that I made.
It's a clue.
And so we were living off like $50,000 a year in an apartment with one car, and we still go to Outback Steakhouse on a somewhat not a regular basis, like once or twice a year, because that's all we could afford on a monthly. Like any given week, we could afford to go out to eat, or we could afford like takeout and go to a movie. And the other like weekend night, we would go to like one of our parents' houses. So like the one restaurant we could afford to go eat, and like this 2014 was like Outback Steakhouse because we could get an appetizer, we both get an entree, and we could get one drink and be under $50 because that was our budget. So I just look back, like we talk about that apartment and those times and like very
cool
high like regard. It's just how much fun it was, and like we just made it work. But
I can relate.
Eventually, my wife basically got me my first job at Infusionsoft. I got hired there, and I don't know why they hired me. I think it's because I got along with everybody there. They thought it was fun, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, we'll just teach you what to do. It's not a big deal." And so they taught me, but I went in there with the same mentality. Like I remember being there at Infusionsoft, and like, there were nights where I would be working there till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. because I walked in there with the same mentality. It's like, if I just outwork everybody, I'll be the very best at my job and I can move up. And that was my mentality.
It's amazing how all those skills, even though it's a physical sport, are so transferable to the business world. And I'd argue they're the most transferable.
I just don't think it's difficult. And again, this kind of goes back to what my pops taught me, was like, he's like, just no matter what you decide to be the very best at it. You want to be a janitor, be the very best janitor. I guarantee you'll make a lot of money being the very best janitor, because you'll probably run some kind of conferences and be speaking and doing whatever. Like, be the very best at whatever it is you want to do, and know that there's no shortcuts. Like, the 10,000 hour rule is a real thing. So are you going to just put in 10,000 hours over the next 20 years like most people do? Or are you willing to accelerate that over the next 4 years because you're willing to work longer days?
Do you think, I don't want to stop here for a second and then we'll keep going because I'm fascinated because I haven't heard this whole story, but do you think people underestimate the volume that's required to become good at a craft?
I think so. I think so. I don't know if this is like me just getting older, and I'm like kind of getting older. I'm like, this young generation doesn't understand hard. Like, I don't know if I feel like got it there by age, because I feel like that's my mentality now a little bit. But like, I do think that like social media has kind of maybe wrecked things. I feel like that's an old man's take. And so I'm trying not to like just say that. But like, you know, I talk to my nephews about it who are younger and stuff like that. I'm like, guys, there's no shortcuts here. Like, some people maybe get lucky, right? But like, we're all dealt a deck of cards, right? Like, I look at life like a poker game. Like, you might have pocket rockets, right? You might hit on a flush. Like, that's great for you. But I might have a shitty deck of cards, and I guarantee you somebody's gonna have a better hand than me, and I guarantee you somebody's gonna have a worse hand than me. Mm-hmm. But the reality and what makes poker great is like, I get to keep playing. So the goal for me is keep playing. If you can keep playing, the longer you keep playing, the more odds you give yourself the chance to win. Damn. And so my goal, like, I think that's the goal in business, is like, just keep playing. If you can keep playing, you get a chance to win.
Taylor's been really high on that right now. You know, he's like, hey, let's remember what the goal is. And the goal is to keep playing. And then he'd also go a little dark with it and say, what's the enemy? Like, what's the boogeyman? The boogeyman is, you know, we run ourselves so hard that we don't want to be playing the game.
The goal is not the destination, it's the journey.
That's right.
You know, I know we were talking about golf earlier. Like, Tiger Woods has said this really well that's resonated with me. He's like, because everybody asked him, like, it's like, hey, why do you keep trying to do this? He's like, because the journey, like, trying to grind it out one more time is the reward. I watch a lot of Cars because I have a 2 and 4 year old, like the movie Cars. And in Cars 3, Lightning McQueen says it like, he says, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. He literally says, like, you know, selling the merchandise and being a has-been isn't the goal. Like, going down and trying to win at 200 miles an hour, that's the goal. Yeah. Like, that's the destination. So, I mean, I look at business the same way. It's like, being in the game is the goal.
Man, that's good. I was watching that interview with Tiger. He says they were asking him what he thought about his chances this week. You know, and he was talking about, you know, if I forget what he said, and they asked him why are you still trying to pursue this? He goes, I love golf.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't say he loved winning. Clearly he does, and he's defined that. But I love golf. I love the sport of golf. Yeah.
When people ask me like, hey, do you miss football? Like, yes and no. Like, I don't miss. Like, I'm 33 now, and this is the best I've ever felt in my life. I don't miss being 24 years old and telling my wife, hey, we got to live in a 1-story house or the first floor of an apartment building because I can't walk upstairs. Because that's where I was at. My knees were shot. You know, I'm already on the list for hip replacement once I turn 45. Like, all those things. And so, you know, but I miss getting, you know, this whole week I got up at 3:30 because I had to get some work done, but I won't miss workouts. Like, I miss showing up to the gym, getting a workout in when no one's in there. It's cold. It's a Youngstown, Ohio, Northeast Ohio winter. It's negative 10 degrees. Everybody's pissed off. It's cold. Everybody shows up at 6 a.m. I already got a workout in. Like, and I look you in the eyes and I'm like, I own you. Like, submitting your will on another person, you can't. It's just, you know, I miss that.
The Goggins, you take their soul.
That,
yeah. Like, I'm going to own you.
Yeah.
Like,
that competitor, man.
Yeah. I miss that. That's the part I miss.
So let's go back to, because that's that competitive, you know, drive that makes you stay till 6, 8 o'clock at night in this new business. What was the role? Were you in?
Yeah, so I went in the customer success department doing implementations and onboarding.
Okay.
And so within the first, you know, 8 months that I was there, I got moved to a small, like, specialized team of 3 people doing custom implementations onboarding. basically larger businesses, people that like the Ryan Dices and digital marketers of the world, and like these larger $10+ million companies. And so I did that. So I was at Infusionsoft for a grand total of about a year and a half. So I was there for about 16 months, and then I decided to leave. And I left because I was like, I'm just going to do this myself. Like, I'm just going to go and sell clients. And I felt like there was a better way to do what I was doing. And I wanted to create that for myself and create the way I felt like it should be done. And so I left and started kind of a tech implementation company. We were implementing Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign or HubSpot and even Salesforce, and doing custom integration work and custom workflows and implementations and things like that.
Wow.
And so that spun off into like my first product, which was an e-commerce plugin for a company called Avalara that does like sales, e-commerce sales tax, and plugs into different platforms, and then into some different plugins that kind of got me into the SaaS and reoccurring revenue. And that's where I was like, oh, I really love the idea of reoccurring revenue. And I did that for a while. We had a small team, and we were a super profitable company. We did really well. But we started working with insurance agencies, and just kind of saw what was going on in the insurance space. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And kind of started working on some things through 2019 that ended up, leading to us launching Better Agency at the end of 2019. And that basically became like my full-time gig for the next few years of just running Better Agency and trying to get that off the ground.
It's amazing. So no tech experience, gets in the business, grinds it out, learns the deal, saw a need. Did you have partners on that first one?
Yeah, I've always brought partners in with me. I like accountability. I like teams. I don't like working by myself. If you let me be to my own accord, I'll just go play golf or go snowboarding or something like that. Like, I like being around people.
Is that, and do you kind of relate that to the team aspect of football a little bit?
Yeah, like all I know my whole life is locker room. And so like, I just need to be around people. So like, that. I don't like working at home. Like, it's convenient sometimes, but like being by myself, literally I'll work until 1:00, and it's like, I can't do this anymore if I'm working at home. I just can't.
Yeah, I relate to that. I struggle with that. I'm a social being. So even if I'm in an environment, I could still be locked in, but as long as I know that other people are in the fight with me, I feed off that.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, I feel, I don't know, I feel siloed.
Right.
I don't get the energy.
Yeah, so that's a great level of awareness to understanding your bias and then getting leverage on yourself to say, hey, I know what I look like by myself, so I'm going to seek out partnership. I also wanted to go back to the locker room and the workouts. It's so funny. People think that all athletes are super competitive or mentally tough, and there's just such levels to it, right? And you're clearly the guy on every team that drives that, and it's so apparent with your story that there's guys that have worked up their lather for the hour and are looking you in the eyes and ready to go to the next level. And then there's guys that are just dragging ass to come in. It's not the same. And it's almost like it reminds me in business too. It's also not the same. You could be the same guy doing the same thing in the same ecosystem, but there's a level to that commitment and that mentality that it's not just all athletes are like that. There's different levels to it.
Oh yeah. It's why I miss the workouts and the competition, because you'd finish a workout on Friday and we would do some kind of competition. You'd do towel drills or like I forget what we called them, but you'd grip like the 45-pound, the big rubber weights. We'd do grip strength, and you'd match up against somebody who's going to hold it longer. And it's like, you're not going to beat me. Yeah. Like, I'm just going to hold it. Like I watched actually one guy. We were doing pull-ups. It was a pull-up competition. I watched one guy tear his bicep because he wouldn't stop. He was just going to hold it. Like, he wasn't going to lose. He tore his bicep. So there is a point where you got to call it.
Well, funny story. Or you're doing planks.
Yeah.
You said at the end of the day, you'd hold planks for no time. Essentially, hold planks till you break, and you'd see who could go the longest, right? And I remember actually played with both of Michael Jordan's sons, and he would come every once in a while and watch us work out or hang out. And I remember he was in the weight room, and I'm thinking, who's going to break with Michael Jordan here? Like, there's no way anybody breaks.
That's right. I love
and
that
we had
story.
a dude that went quick, and I'm like,
I
know exactly who you are now. You know what I mean? So
I even play the game with my nephews where like I'll do staring contests with them every time I see them. I'm like, I will never lose a staring contest.
we're going to do that after a couple
Dude,
of
I'm
drinks.
definitely going to do that with
we're
you.
gonna do a
Oh yeah,
staring contest.
yeah, I'll do that. I'll do it all day. I just, like my family won't even play Monopoly with me. It's
not enjoyable.
I think there's a lot of people that are that. Yeah, like my wife does this too. Like we'll play different card games. She'll be like, "You guys play Rummy? Like have you ever played Rummy? Like there's certain there's certain ways, different versions of Rummy, and there's one version I think, and I can't remember what it's Shanghai, and it's like, hey, I have enough points that if I just get rid of my high cards, I'm going to win.
Right.
And my wife can't stand when I do that. I'm like, I'm winning.
Right.
Like I'm not going to lose. Like I'm not going. It's just a risk reward scenario here. Like if I get rid of my high cards, I'm guaranteed to win. She's like, that's not how you play. I was like, you play to win the game. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like this is how
bedroom door slams behind.
Yeah, this is just how it works.
You go to fight, honey. Let's go to Outback. Let's make up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love it.
One drink.
Exactly. So let's talk about Better Agency for a second, because that's been an incredible project that you guys have put together. It's been, the branding's been amazing. It's 5 years. Was I right with that?
Yeah. I've been working on it for 5 years. I think we've been officially like in market for about 4 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So and two partners in that business.
Yes. Yeah. I have one main partner and then another partner too on the product side.
That's amazing. That's very cool. So talk to us a little bit about that, because you come into the insurance space, you've got this, broken, compartmentalized, duct taped ecosystem, if you will. What was the idea there? And, it came through obviously working with those insurance agents to see what they were probably using. What was the genesis of that and the aim, and I'll let you expand on that.
Yeah. So when I was running the tech-enabled company, we would be working with insurance agencies, and that's how I kind of got the idea and my findings. And we were working with some small agencies, and we were working with some of the top, 100 indie agencies out there. Obviously they're using Salesforce or whatever they're using at the time. And obviously if you're a smaller brokerage, you're using something a little bit different. And what I realized is they're still trying to all do the same thing. So they're trying to do the same thing. If you're a large brokerage, you have resources like developers and access to technology that maybe a small indie doesn't have, right? And so what I was like, when I was looking at this industry, I was like, well, let's build a product that takes what they're trying to do so that a small 1 or 3 person agency could do it, but also still provides value for the larger agency so that they have a systemized process to follow. Because what happens is you go into these larger agencies and upper management thinks this is how we're doing things. And then when you get down into the weeds, it's like, this is not what's happening.
Wow.
And you have no idea.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that because we're looking at the data. And so we started off the thesis of independent insurance agencies sell carrier products. So indies should always be selling. And that was our thesis. So how do we help agencies sell more?
Yes.
And so we started with, trying to provide a sales and marketing automation platform to help agencies sell more premium. And so that's kind of the thesis that we went off of. We tried to take what we knew really well from Salesforce and HubSpot and Infusionsoft and say, how do we harness all the power of those kind of platforms, but put it in a version where you don't have to go through a multi-month or multi-year implementation. You don't have to spend, 5-6 figures in implementation costs. You could have up and running and getting value in 15 minutes. That's what we wanted to, create. And to an extent, we created that. And, I could probably spend a couple hours telling you guys all the mistakes we made, all the things that I don't regret doing because it's what's kind of shaped the way I look at things and how I would do them differently and whatever the next thing is I do. But we have learned a ton, and we executed on the main thesis that we wanted to do. And I think it's taught us a lot of what we're working on now towards too. But that's where we started and kind of how we started it.
Yeah, because that's what I've been most impressed. I mean, I feel like it's expedited the industry in a significant way. I mean, I don't know another product that came to market with instantly putting you in the driver's seat to go on offense with marketing and sales. Yeah. Right. And I, for me personally, I remember when I first was introduced to when you guys launched I didn't see a lot of indies in a CRM. I saw most of them operating in an agency management system, and we were operating solely in an AMS too. And to be able to plug into a platform that gives you the ability to be on the driver of outbound reach and be able to manage that was something that I had just never seen before.
It was an interesting thing that we found in the data we were looking at, which was the average business, average SMB business, right? So call it $100,000 to $5 million in revenue, spends on average anywhere between 10 to 20% of revenue on sales and marketing. Do you know what the average independent agent spends on sales and marketing?
I'm sorry, what's SMB?
A small business owner.
Okay, just in general.
Just in general.
Okay, not insurance.
Not
specific,
insurance.
Just in
10 to
general.
20% of
Okay,
their revenue goes
Follow.
to sales and marketing. Average independent insurance agency spends less than 5, and most spend less than 1. I think it's 70% less spend less than 1.
That doesn't include any payroll. That's just marketing.
That's just straight marketing dollars, straight sales dollars. Wow. They're not putting money into marketing.
Did you say 5% in indie space?
Yeah.
I said most less
Most are less than 1. They're relying off referrals and clients, and this is probably a little bit recency bias, but like I just see it all the time. Like, hey, they're like, I'll hear agents talking about like, hey, I want to connect with my clients. I want to talk to them. I'm like, they don't want to talk to you.
Amen.
They don't. I think it's great to have the personal side of the business, right? Like, I think that's very, very important. But what are you doing to drive your business forward today? Because, sometimes talking to clients might do that. But for the same agent that posts that, that agency, one of our employees has their insurance there, and their policy went up. They doubled. They never heard from him. And so she just canceled with them. And he's the same one talking about on LinkedIn, call your clients and have a relationship with them. And I'm like,
that is so practically helpful, because like your intention is to do that, but it's probably not a reality for that particular role. And you still drop the ball. Yeah. It's your full intention. So you give up this marketing intention for this service intention, but you still don't meet expectations. With what I find most times, honestly, I haven't really met an insurance independent agent because it's so hard on the service side, where you could say that they're incredible on the service side. I mean, except for niche, commercial, bigger stuff where more time, I'm talking about personal lines for the most part, just because it's such a volume game, that you're just absolutely lights out and you never have issues on the customer service side.
Yeah, it's almost impossible, I think. But.
Yeah, it's like, I also think that's a euphoria of what you wish it to be, but that's just not reality, right? Like, and it's also like we think, I was talking to somebody the other day, like we think someone's insurance is a bigger deal to them. Like they don't want to hear from you. They have life going on, right? They have kids, they have soccer practice, they have life events. They just want to know that it's good and I don't have to worry about it, right? And so I think a lot of times that mindset is you're overvaluing how important it is for them to hear from you. And it's not that it's not important to have touches. It's not important for them to know that you're being proactive. But, Jerry doesn't want to hear from me every month about whatever it is, because bottom line is I can't do that. Number one, it's not scalable. But number two, Jerry wants to know everything's fine, it's good, and I'm making sure that we're taking care of them and looking out for them. But they're preoccupied with what's called life, not when their renewal date is for their auto insurance.
I don't even care what my renewal number is. Just make sure I have insurance. Like my wife handles all of our stuff. Like we've talked to, our policies with an independent agent or agency. And, we recently had to go through a claims process, and it's like, that's the first time we've talked to our agent in 3 years, and we're totally happy with that.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to talk to my insurance. Now I talk to that insurance agent because he's a friend, but like, I don't need to talk to him about like my insurance.
Yeah.
Like I have my insurance. I have, it's like my attorney. I don't want to talk to my attorney because it costs me a decent amount of money every time I talk to him. But like I know he's there for when I need him.
Well,
That's like my insurance
I think it's
agent.
twofold when you start talking about your insurance agent, right? I think there needs to be a foundation of a relationship. You say
Yes.
you're friends with him. That's so you do talk to him. You're friends with him.
Yeah.
It's just we don't talk about insurance,
Right.
So I think there's a blend there of some degree of.
I just think also too, like do you want to scale, or do you want to keep a very boutique agency? There's just a different practicality when it comes to enterprising something on a larger level. And when I look at Better Agency, it gave the ability for you to get these outbound functions at scale, right? Pre-built templates, outbound campaigns, pipeline management, accountability, like all the things that I had never seen basically in the box already done for you,
Right.
which I feel like was your guys' competitive advantage and what I think you guys did so well. And you're still, one of the premier people that I've seen that have done that. But I think what I wanted to ask you is, you guys see this stuff all the time because you're working with agencies on every level, right? What are, if you don't mind me asking some of these things for those that are listening, what are some of, you just mentioned one, which was something that was a perception of somebody's, what they think that their clients want, but what do you see as being what are some bottlenecks to some of these agents going to the next level, that, or even us that go to the next level that you see all the time because you have such a large sample size? You're seeing ones that are doing it great. You're seeing ones that are not doing it well. You're seeing consistent challenges. You're seeing people that are winning. I just feel like your ability to assess that marketplace is so uniquely positioned because you just see it every day.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think, it's been, now that we've been at this for 4 years, like we have some clients that came to us in 2020, right? 2019, 2020, that their business wasn't really growing, and they've been with us for 3 years, and they've doubled every year over the last 3 years. True. And that's material difference from where they were at 3 years ago. I think that's like the most rewarding thing that I've been able to see. And we've had plenty of people that haven't done that, but those are like the really fun ones that kind of like keep you going through on hard days. But I think the thing that we commonly see is like, or that I commonly see is that and just like any business, there's like analysis by paralysis. It's like, hey, you're not used to doing something and you're not used to some kind of change. And so now you want it to be perfect. It's like, hey, you're not used to sending out emails or text messages automated where you're not the one sending them. So like, you want to make sure they're perfect. And what I'm here to tell you is it doesn't matter. You want to know the number one responded email that I've ever sent in my entire career? Before Better, it wasn't even at Better Agency, it wasn't at Infusionsoft. My number one responded email in terms of click-through rate, opened rate, and how much money it drove was an email that said, with a subject line, whoops, sorry for the mistake. And it went into a thing because we sent out the wrong link for something that we were sending. And we ran it and we realized it, and we're like, well, let's run a test. And it's like, that's the email we sent. And it's like, we've sent so many incorrect pieces of content out, and it doesn't matter. The whole goal of personalized automated follow-up is to make it personalized. Guess what people do when they're being personable? They mess up. So like, if you don't send something perfect, right, that's called being a person. I mean, none of us are perfect. And so just send it out. Like, you have to, like, in order to grow your business, it's going to be uncomfortable because you're going somewhere you haven't been. So you have to try something different. You have to be open to that and knowing that there's going to be pain along the way. Like, that's just part of the journey.
Yeah.
Man,
and I think the sooner you can accept that, the sooner you can say, hey, this isn't pain in a negative way. This is like, it's like I'm telling my 4-year-old, like, it's growing pains. Like, your leg hurts because you're growing.
We've sent out, 8,000 notifications, and, you get 2 respond back that said, hey, my name's incorrect. And you freak out, right? You freak out because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. How can we do this? But it's so, you think about the 2 people, but you forget about the fact that 8,000 people just got a message from you and are engaged in your client experience now that you never had before. But our minds go to, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. And it's like, you got to be willing for it to be messy.
Not to mention, now you've got 2 people to go create a personal experience with.
Yeah, I was just going to say, your client's attention is their most valuable. It's your most valuable asset. So if you can draw it in, now you have their attention. And back to the sales and marketing conversation, I'd love to speak to this. It's almost like we talk about it's an or mindset, and we try to make it an and mindset. A mistake that I see is to say, hey, I can be really, really good at servicing, or I can be really effective and invest in sales and marketing. And I kind of look at that and say, you can do both with the right tools, with the right training, with the right intentions. Do you see agencies that do that both well? And if so, what are they doing that businesses can pay attention to?
Yeah, I do see, I do think it's possible, and I do see those agencies. And I think that, like anything else, it's like having a very routine process. Like, everybody goes through, and that's why it's, whether you use Better Agency or use any system, you've got to follow a process. There's other systems out there that at least give you the foundation to have a process to follow, so that everybody can go through it and experience it so that you're not dropping the ball and you can always improve upon it. But I see agencies all the time that are running successful. There's no reason why you couldn't run a successful service department as well as a successful sales and marketing department. There's no reason. First of all, they're separate functions. And it's investing in building the team. It's, what I see from a lot of agencies, a lot of people are really happy with what they have, which is great. So like, just call it what it is though. Don't, if that's what you want, which is this, a boutique agency or kind of the mom and pop shop, then you can run it like that. And you'd rather spend your days, running golf. But if you're, and I think we're seeing more of these kind of agencies that are coming in and saying, hey, I could grow this over a 3 or 4 year span to $1 million in revenue and create a really awesome business. And I think that's what's great about insurance is like, you can do that. And if you really focus on that, you can go and do that. And, but it's two different mentalities.
And I also think that when you started that, they're two separate functions. It might just start there, right? It might just start acknowledging that, Sally who does sales is not going to be Sally who does service, because those are two distinct functions that at scale, you want different teams, different departments, different people, that being their main priority is service or their main priority is marketing and sales. But when you try to blend both, you end up dropping both balls, it seems.
Yeah, well, I know people don't love talking about like captive agencies, but there's a reason why the captive model is successful. And it's because you limit the scope of work.
Yes.
You limit the focus.
Yes.
Right? Like you have separate people. Guess what you don't do as a captive agent? You don't service a policy. You don't. You're not going to touch it. So you don't even have to think about it.
There's no remarketing it. You're having maybe conversations, but you're not having to go back through and rerun all this stuff through the raters and do all the functions that independent agents have to do. I mean, you're not getting non-renewed 350 policies in 30 days where you got to rewrite all of them. We're going to lose all the policies. That never happens down here in Florida.
And I didn't see that on the news this morning as I was leaving the hotel about how I forget which insurance. They're just dropping policies left and right. I forget which one.
I think that's a good point though, because there are pros and cons to every model. If there wasn't pros and cons, they wouldn't exist.
Right.
So it's like everybody wants to pretend that one way is the best, but it's really not. It's just different. And for you not to at least assess the pros of your competing model, it's almost like the art of war. You don't know who the enemy is, so how can you know yourself? It's like, so I love you said that. I think it's important to hear that. There are extreme benefits of being captive because of that specific thing, just like there's, challenges with it. But let me ask you this. Tech and process. Do you see agents who have the technology but either don't have the process to be able to execute on it? Or do you see most that they have the process and they don't have the technology to execute on it?
Good question.
It is a good question. I mean, I see both. I most of the time I see agencies that don't have the process or the tech. It's just not defined enough on either side. I think there's good and bad to both. I mean, agencies that have the process are usually less willing to look at a different way of doing things, even if they could potentially be better, because you don't want to run the test. And sometimes you got to be willing to run the test to see where are the areas of improvement.
Ooh, that's good. I didn't think about that. That makes sense. It's working. I'm doing it. I got my process. It's working. However, you might be able to optimize and do better, but because it's working and it's not broken, I'm not willing to look at other options.
Yep.
Correct. And then let's say an agency that has the tech but no real process, then what's the point of the tech?
Yep.
Do you see that a lot? I know when, even in our legacy management system, there was just so many functions that we weren't taking advantage of. And yet you're paying for this tool and you maybe use 2 or 3 different functions of the tool, but there are all these other things and you don't really, you're not really showcasing or using that. Do you see that a lot with different things inside your ecosystem where maybe agents aren't even aware of some of the things that they could do?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we see it sometimes on our platform where people aren't using everything, but we see it all the time, especially with, some of the legacy systems that exist in the space is, an agency management system by definition was built to manage your agency. It's an agency management system. And that's probably where our product greatly differs from most is we are not a quote unquote agency management system. We are still a CRM. Yep. And the reason being is we think agencies shouldn't be managing an agency. You should be selling. That's what should be happening. You have a service team that can service. You have an accountant to do accounting. Like I don't, like I run a software company. You want to know what CRM we use? We use HubSpot. You want to know how many times I've logged into HubSpot? 0. I don't log into our HubSpot. Like I don't use what our sales team uses or our customer success team uses because I'm not in those departments.
Right.
That's not what I do. Right. I'm in Excel spreadsheets. Like that's kind of what I do. But like, you know, there's roles. And so, you know, we see that a lot, like where agencies are on an agency management system and they're using literally 5% of it because, you know, it was built off a model of how agencies were ran back in the 80s or 90s where you were accounting based. You were
direct
account based.
Yeah, the agency billing.
Correct. And I mean, the agency bill still exists, but there's a lot of now new ways to be able to do that. But again, as an agency, I think especially now moving forward, I mean, especially in today's personalized market, and you guys know this better than most, obviously in Florida, but like if you're not growing your book of business, you are probably falling behind. And so the days of like maintaining and renewing and, hey, you have your built-in, this is the other thing about insurance that I think is so funny, is, you know, if an agency comes to me and says, I grew my revenue by 10% last year, I'm like, cool, you didn't do anything. Like, great job.
Let's nail this.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Oh,
Great job.
Less,
You did
less than nothing.
You did less than nothing because the carriers take care of that for you so that if you literally do nothing and you have an average retention rate, you're going to grow your insurance agency. And that's what makes insurance great. But guess what you could do if you could compound that?
Dude.
And so
No doubt.
I think agencies still do that. And I think some agencies are still content with growing 10 or 20% a year. And from what I see from agencies, I think if you're growing by 10 or 20% a year, I'd say good luck in the next 3 to 5 years because I don't know that you'll be around.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You talk about the distribution model being squeezed. I mean, right? The distribution commissions are getting cut.
Yeah.
Most of it is the renewal commissions. That's what goes first, right? Which is what the legacy agents hold on to. I built my book of business. I have this predictable. And that's been changed, right? So if you're not marketing and selling with that new model, again, it's even, and I think that's what you're referencing. Not only are you giving up of what could be growth, but now you're going to fall into a position that it's not going to be the way it once was, and you're going to bleed out from an attrition standpoint.
I talked to agents, I mean, since the market, especially the insurance market, has done what it's done over the last year and a half. I talked to 90% of the agencies I talk to is like, hey, we're just trying to survive our personal lines book of business. But every once in a while, I talk to an agent that's like, I'm just rolling people left and right. I'm moving them, and they're killing it on the new business commission, rolling it because they're taking advantage of it. They're not even marketing new leads. They're taking all the renewals and they're just going out and doing the work, and they're just moving people to wherever it makes the most sense. And they're just taking advantage of it. And they're like, you know what? We're going to do whatever we can. And all of a sudden, those are the agencies that I'm looking back and look at the numbers saying, that agency just grew by 30 or 40% on a personal lines. They did it.
Yep.
Because they were willing to put it, they were willing to follow a process and try to go do something about it instead of, hey, we're just going to try to retain and say it's a hard market and we're just going to do our best to survive.
Well, and how about this? The combination between when somebody calls you and they're getting non-renewed or their rate went up, but you don't have their car insurance. So not only can you couple it with moving them if you have an option available, in Florida a lot of times you don't, but you have a new business opportunity that's sitting right there. So when you combine those two, that's where it gets explosive to where now you have the client's attention, you have good intentions, you can offer another product that's going to be best for them, influence, win-win, boom.
We had a user that accidentally sent out the wrong campaign. They sent out like across, they were trying to send out like, hey, we need to like talk, we need to update your life policy or whatever. And they sent it to a group of people that didn't have life policies. He sold 40 life policies. Sold 40 life policies in a month. He never sold life policies before.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And that goes back to your first point.
Goes back to
the
your
perfect email.
The perfect email isn't going to necessarily
perfect
be the
marketing and campaign that you drop
Sorry
on a
for my
whiteboard.
mistake.
Yep, sorry for my mistake. I'll sell 40 policies this month.
That's what he should have posted.
Oh, God.
So, whoops. Sorry for my mistake.
Sorry for my mistake.
Well, and so I want to take a second here because that's just profound, and we're biased because this is a chair that we have stood on for the last 24 months. And candidly, we still have people within the organization that are slow to come around to this idea that, hey, look, you can't just base you're selling more premium. Premium's gone up 40, 50%. Like, what do you like? Who are you kidding here? Like, if you want to hide behind this, then that's great. But the reality is, let's look at where the benchmark of the average rate increase looks like. Anything below that, and you're worse, right? Like, so these predictors or these metrics that allow you to run on these false narratives that I'm doing okay, and also I look at, what problem do independent agents solve, right? If I'm a carrier, I don't have to spend money on marketing and sales, and they're going to do it for me. In essence, that's what it is. Now we've even got service centers that the carriers are providing that you could pay them to service the business. It is easier for them to take care of the business than it is for them to go out and get new. That's just the reality of insurance. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the best SaaS model of all time, right? And around for hundreds of years. So if the marketing and the sales function is the problem that you're solving for these markets, for these carriers, wouldn't it make sense to put a higher or more or a greater emphasis on the tools, the resources, the narrative, the emphasis on that part of the business? And call it whatever you want. Growth is not just arbitrage. We don't just get growth for growth, but growth is what makes the world go around on a business. Growth is what makes the world go around with creating impact. Growth is what makes, it's the scoreboard on the game of business that we play. And it is important when you're talking about a function of if you're having success or you're not, so what is maybe the biggest thing, what is the biggest thing that you've seen in regards to the agencies that are having that big growth in regards to organic offense that they're doing that maybe the other agents are not doing?
There's probably a couple things. You said something in there though that I always think about, and it's that insurance is a SaaS model, right? It's reoccurring revenue. But as a SaaS founder, what are the things that I obsessively look at, right? I'm looking at what's our logo retention, what's our gross retention, what's our net revenue retention, what's our upsell capabilities, what's our gross margins, what's our customer acquisition cost, right? What's our CAC? What's our time to recoup our funds from our CAC, things like that, our CAC to LTV ratio, different things like that. And I can't tell you, I've never heard an insurance agent ever talk about any of those things. Yet you guys run the same type of model of business that I do. And those things matter. And so, when you look at that and why they matter is like, you need to understand where are you inefficient in your process and in your model, and where do you need to invest to improve those, and where are your areas of opportunity? Like, if you don't know, it goes back to the revenue growth. Like, okay, if you grew in revenue, that's great. All right, what was your logo? What was your account retention? What was your policy retention? But then what was your gross revenue retention? Like, how many were you able to,
Well, I think a lot of people could base retention off of how much revenue I held on to. But I mean, especially in personal lines, I don't know if there's another metric other than household retention or policy retention that can actually give a real predictive analysis of how well you're doing.
I want to know your household retention. I want to know your policy retention. I want to know.
Yeah, retained revenue. What is that? I mean, revenue went up. Like what? Like
I want to. Well, are you asking that as a
well? I just think like, hey, we had as I hear agents say all the time, we had a 97% retention. And I'm like, really? Okay. Well,
I promise you they didn't.
And they're basing it off of retained revenue, and it's like, well, wait a second. But how many households did you lose? You
have to scrape out the natural upsell that happens in insurance. And then the best way to look at retention is what's your policy count?
Yes.
So if you had 100 policies last year, those same 100 policies, how many do you have today?
Yes.
And I'm telling you, the average independent agent runs at 85%, and 90% of them are going to tell you they run at 94%.
Yeah, and by the way, they're going to be very proud of it. Yeah. And they're going to tell you more than once. Well,
yeah. No, trust me. We have talked to 5,000 insurance agencies in the last 4 years. Yeah. 90% of them are saying that they have the best retention rate. It's
ridiculous.
All right, so that goes back to my or comment. I think it's an obsessing over a thing that is less in your control than you think. If it's a system and it's a process and there's a service team, it's one thing. But I just think it's a false intention. I do want to give you a shout, Brett, because you've always done an incredible job with. I could look back we've been in business 13 years, and I bet 12 of those years, Brett has absolutely obsessed about all the things that you mentioned that you obsess about, which I think was so ahead of its time, but it's a reminder that it's not innate to people. It really is a skill that you have to develop. And we've seen some of our team members that are going out and they're business owners now within their own business, and they're playing catch up on this information and what it means. And not only what the information is, but ultimately what they can do to affect that information. What are the levers that I can actually pull to affect retention, not pretend to pull? What are the levers that I can actually pull on marketing and sales, like getting a tool or whatever it is? And I think it's not about the information, it's about the use of information, the predictability of it. So,
well, I appreciate that, man. I also thank you. And I would even layer on top of that is I don't even think people understand there's a problem because they don't even know what data sets to look at, right? If you think you have 95% retention, you're just never going to look at it because you're, like if there's these components that it's the information that you think it's giving you a false narrative on if you're doing well or if you're not doing well. And everything you just named, there's a lot of data points that I don't understand on there, which I'd love to unpack, which is really cool, which is why I always call you for stuff like this. But specifically with policy count, we're dealing with that inside of our agency, right? Like it's getting a different mindset to say, what is the universal language that no matter if you're in Jupiter and your homeowner's policy is $10,000 or you're in Mount Dora and the homeowner's insurance policy is $1,200, what is the data set that allows you to have a universal level of productivity measurement? And that's policy count per household. You can't go off premium. And I'd argue that you could go off revenue if you want, but from a productivity standpoint, you might not even be able to go off revenue, right?
Revenue could change based off what your commission percentage is.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not leading, right? It's not a controllable and an action, a KPI that you can focus on. It's like some accounts are bigger than others, right?
I think about what did you produce. You say that. Just think about what did you produce for that 10 or 20% growth. What did you produce?
Not rate. So good. So when you're aggregating all this data for these agents, man, this is a question. When you're aggregating all this data for all these agencies that you do, what are some of the big data sets that you look at for agency performance?
Well, I can say that across hundreds of thousands of policies, the average retention rate is about 84%, which is better than captive, which is better than direct because they sit at high 70s or mid 70s or whatever. It's about 85% on average. The best that I've seen from an individual agency that's, I'm going to say producing real volume, right? Like they're more than a boutique agency, is 95%.
Wow.
That's the best I've seen. Anybody that says they're doing better than that, I would love to look at it and be proven wrong, but that's the best I've seen.
And I would love to learn from the 95% at scale at volume to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that it's not a big number. It's not that it doesn't matter. Ironically, we're right. We've always been right in the hardest market in Florida. We're 84.3.
It's so funny. I was just about to,
So that number's spot on.
I was going to ask you. Yeah.
We the other thing I can look at is we send out on average a couple million emails a month across all of our databases and probably even more text messages. And so when I tell you like whether or not a piece of content or a workflow does well, I promise you it's right because we know exactly what the open rates are on one email versus another.
Wow.
And we know, what flow works well and what doesn't work well.
Is there a frequency in which the agencies that are having success are on a cadence, or have you seen any parallels or patterns with that?
It's not necessarily the frequency in terms of hey, send this email and then this much time needs to go by and then send this text or this type of email. It's more so, can you reach, I think it's something like, can we get to 10 touch points in 13 days? Can you get to 10 touch points within 2 weeks? Your chance of closing goes up by 70% versus somebody that cannot do that.
And does that include any manual touch point? But there's just the data would suggest that 10 touch points in 13 days is going to improve.
It does. It could be manual outreach. It could be, but any kind of outreach, any kind of touch base. Also, when somebody responds or does anything, submits a form, makes a phone call, opens an email, your chance of closing them go up by 90% if you can get something back out to them within the next 2 minutes.
Hold on, say that again.
So somebody submits a form on your website, let's say.
Yep.
Right. Let's say they do it at 9:00 at night. If you can just get an auto-responder email out to them, say, you've reached us after hours, we'll touch base with you first thing in the morning. They open it. Your chances of converting go up 90% just by delivering that email.
Wow.
So those are two.
Versus if you wait 1 hour, it drops it drops by over 50%. Your close rate.
That advice is worth millions of dollars.
Super valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the way, if you take nothing else from this podcast, 10 touches in the first 13 days, and then the response time in the first 2 minutes, get them something.
You said both of them increased close ratio by 90%.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the 1 in 2 minutes is 90%, and then the 10 touch points in 13 days is like 70% or something.
You said, yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
I'm not a great mathematician, but that seems like a good number.
Yeah. The agencies that we've seen triple, double every year after year, it's the ones that are incorporating We're using automated personalized follow-up. We're using emails. We're using text messages in our sales process. They're going through a sales process, and they're just talking to people. And so, it's every stage. New lead, it's all the touch points, right? They talk to somebody, it's all the touch points after that. They deliver a quote, it's all the touch points, right? They become a client, now there's a bunch of touch points. But it's also the ones that are going back and saying, hey, all right, we have somebody with their home, we're going to cross-sell auto, and we're going to deliver 10 touch points over 13 days, twice a year.
And those are choreographed, right? Someone has to be intentional about what those actually look like. They got to map it out. They got to say, here's what's going to happen. Well,
you don't have to map it out if you use Better Agency.
There you go.
I won't plug anything else.
I love that.
Hey, so let me ask you. So 10 touches in 13 days at 2 different times of the year. So it's not over the year. It's essentially mini blitzes on a specific reason.
Correct. Yeah. So it could be they're coming in for a new sale. It could be
monoline client.
It could be a monoline client you're trying to cross sell. And you could do it more than twice a year, but you probably know, let's say you sold their home, probably generally speaking when their auto policy is going to expire. So you X-date it.
Yep.
Right. Or let's say they have auto and home, and once a quarter you just go and grab all of your auto and home clients that have no life, and you just blitz life.
Sorry for my mistake.
Sorry
for my mistake. You just blasted out to the whole list.
That's amazing. So those are really big pieces of data advice that you've seen. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about conversions because Rod is big on this, but we always talk about marketing velocity, and it's about getting those new prospects. But I think some agents, and us included at time, our conversion ratio we think is so dependent on how good we are, and it's less dependent on the process in which the customer gets put into, and then meeting those expectations within the process. And I think what we've learned at scale, there are certainly people that are more skilled on the phone and ask better questions and get better outcomes. But when you look across 20 agents selling the same type of products, stuff starts to show itself in the data.
This is such a good point. So I don't want to, there's a part of me that always wants to say that I don't think good sales reps really matter, but I don't think that's actually true. To your point, some people are just better on the phone. They're better in person. They're really good. I think they matter a little bit more on high dollar sales,
Yep.
but I think they do matter.
Great point.
But do you think at a large agency, top 100 agency, and there are 40 producers that they have on staff or 50 producers they have on staff, that all 50 of them are rock star sales reps?
Nope.
No, there's just a process. And so your mean might be 60%, and you have your lower performers that are going to eventually churn out that are maybe running at 40%, and you're going to replace those. And your goal is to obviously try to increase the mean, but your average is going to be 60%. And then you're going to have your rock stars that are throwing out 75, right? And you're going to keep trying to filter through and find more of those. But every time I see a post from an independent agency owner that's like, I can't find a good sales rep, it's like, no, you just don't have a good process.
Ooh, baby.
You don't have a good process.
That.
Because you will grow your agency if you're converting 40 or 50%. It's just not ideal, but you're going to grow. You're going to hit good enough numbers because there's good enough margins.
Hell yeah.
Totally was going to say that, is that maybe you don't need a great salesperson. Maybe you need a good enough salesperson.
6 is good enough.
With a great process, right?
She did say that.
Yeah, and that's funny. In our ecosystem, we really like for our salespeople.
Couldn't help it.
That was nice. Yeah, that was real nice. We like our salespeople to be more marketing face, and of course they do sell, but it's more focused on that unique ability to body, because body to body matters. It's just there's different parts of the sale that body to body doesn't matter. Right. And at volume, call it like it is. If you're a personalized insurance agent, and you're working on 100 to 150 deals a month, you might think you can give, 20, 30, 45 minutes to every customer, but you absolutely can't.
Man, no
Can't
doubt.
do it.
You can't
No
do it.
doubt.
Can't do it.
It's I think this book is always over recommended, but the E-Myth, where it talks about what is the technician, the manager, and the owner. Yeah, there you go. And it's like so many agency owners are the technician that became a manager that went out on their own. And you've got to figure out how, you might be closing at 70 or 75%, but your business will grow by bringing in a sales rep that only closes 40. It's going to.
No doubt.
So there's a philosophy that you try to continue to live by, that you want volume first, optimize second. Volume first, optimize second. And it's like, you can build a business off 4s out of 10. Do you want to stay there? Of course not. No. But to think you can't build a business, you're missing the whole component, which is you need volume, you need process. If I could take an average person and make them above average, you can build a really big business. If you have to rely on getting a really good person and making them great, you're going to build a really small business.
The companies that attract the best talent are the ones that give you not just opportunities, but the ability to grow. Do you think a top sales producer wants to go, and no offense to like obviously some of the mom and pop agencies, right? Like you could be location dependent. You could be in the middle of nowhere. But you think you're going to go get the top tier sales rep to go in there with no process and no sales training and no opportunity for growth? No, like you're not going to recruit the top talent. The top talent wants to go to that place where, hey, I have an opportunity to go and be successful, but I'm going to have an opportunity to grow. Yeah. Like, you and I have talked about this where, I have a thesis and a whole program that we've worked on implementing where we would actually place producers in agencies, but agencies need to know that it's a 2-year plan. Like this producer is going to go in there for 2 years, and the plan is you're going to teach them everything you know as an agency owner so that they could one day run their own agency. But they're going to be the best producer you ever have because they're going to be given an opportunity. Like you're going to take somebody that's really hungry and wants to go do it and wants to learn and is at the top of their game, and you're going to get them, and you're only going to have them for 2 years, but you're going to cycle them out to the next one, and that one's going to go become an agency owner. Because if you're not giving those kind of opportunities or that kind of pay or that kind of opportunity, the top people are going to go find that because that's what a top 100 agency is doing. Mm-hmm. That's what the top sales programs are doing. They're not going there because they can just make a bunch of money. It's I can make good money. I'm going to be given an opportunity. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. And then there's a stair step there. That's where the top guys are going.
No one's coming into your business to help you grow your business. They're coming into your business because there's opportunity for them. Yeah. It's like we look at the lens of how do we grow this agency or my business, but instead you need to be looking at it from a lens of what does this person want and how do I allow them to get? Here's the challenge that I find. It's like, and we talk about, we want to build a program, not a team. Like we're team builders, but we want a program because the program continually spits out champions all the time, right?
That's yes.
And you're like, if you're a college sports team, you're trying to recruit the best talent, and then you're trying to get that talent to the league, right? And you might say, well, if my talent leaves and goes to the league, then I'm not going to be able to have consistent performance. Well, no, because your talent leaves, people are going to be attracted, and you got to be now. You might have to shorten the cycle in regards to making them good. You might have a tighter onboarding process, a training program, and what took somebody 2 years, you might need to have to do it in 8-9 months. But that people are always looking from the lens of what's in it for me. They're not looking in from your business.
100%. I say this a lot, and I hear this word a lot. It's like, hey, we're a family here at this company. I'm like, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that because I'm not going to fire my family. Yeah. Not like I don't fire my sister because we got in a disagreement or she's not performing. It's my sister. I love her to death.
I certainly want to.
Yeah,
I want to.
But like we're a team, and guess what happens on teams is. We see it in NFL free agency every year. We see, college football is the right reference. Like sometimes you price yourself out of a situation. Like you got so good and you got to go get paid somewhere else because we don't have the salary cap. And instead of being upset about that, we're going to reward that and we're going to go get somebody else. There's a reason that the best DBs in the country for the last 20 years all went to Alabama. It's because Nick Saban's there. Right. Because I'm going to go be the best DB learning under Nick Saban, right? So many people went to Alabama because, to your point, they're cycling through every year. Alabama for how many years in a row we're putting 4 or 5 guys in the first round. I think there was one year where they had 20 guys drafted.
And how about their coordinators? Their offensive coordinators every single year would get the biggest job on the market.
And Nick Saban talks about this. He's like the hardest part about my job is I have to think about who's going to be my offensive coordinator in 5 years because I'm hiring them now as an assistant. Mm-hmm. And that's how he thinks about building his program. And because that's why Nick Saban, in my opinion, is the greatest college football coach. And he probably is from this generation anyways. I guess you could make some argument from previous generations. But he built a culture and a program of, I can't keep you here for longer than 2 years. Yes. However, we're going to have the next guy in waiting and the next guy in the waiting, the next guy in waiting. I mean, look at the Chiefs. Look at the Chiefs and the Ravens this year. I think they both had 13 free agents leave. And it's because everybody wanted those players because they were at the top of the game. And what do they have to go do this year is they rebuild that. There's a foundation there and there's a program there. I think the Ravens had something like I'm kind of obsessed with like the scouting and draft program. And I think the Ravens, the Packers, the Steelers are the very best at it. And the Cowboys for that matter, although I can go on a rant on the Cowboys. But the Ravens, I think it's something like 30% of the GMs and scouting departments now are filled with people that used to work for the Ravens front office because they're that well versed and have just gone on to different teams because that program produces, and they have to go and continuously recycle the people that bring
such
in.
a cool perspective.
And that's how you have to think about your business.
It's hard too because like that. Thank goodness there's three of us because you kind of, I don't know, because there's three of us, we don't get prisoner to our own. I don't know. Good intentions get washed away with lack of discipline. Yeah. So like because there's three of us, it's like there's an ideology and I'm held accountable and they're held accountable to the ideology no matter how I feel that day because I know I got to perform for my partners. Because that having that is an abundance mindset. It means that there's no scarcity here. We can go get an infinite amount of players.
Right.
But sometimes that's scary because you've got great players. One of our top guys is now an agency owner for Urban Young in St. Pete. Yeah. Okay? He was running a team in here. It was our largest team. And we approached him and said, hey, we want to build this program where we give people the opportunity to get a path to unlimited. We called our independent operator program. And it has to do with you going out and starting an agency and you being the owner of that agency. And we're a partner with you, but it's your deal. And he looked at me and said, what's the catch? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's the catch? He goes, well, I run your largest team. I'm your top producer. You've trained me for the last 10 years. And now you're asking me to go out and do my own thing. There's no economical sense for that for you guys whatsoever. What's the catch? And I was almost like borderline offended at first because I was like, what does it? Nobody thinks like that. And I'm like, well, no, everybody thinks like that. Okay, hold on a second. I was like, well, it is selfish because you just have to peel back the layer for a second. And this comes back to the Saban thing. You're able to make better decisions the longer time horizon is. Nick Saban isn't thinking about this season. No. He isn't thinking about 5 seasons. He's thinking about a legacy for an entire career, right? Matt goes out to St. Pete, starts that agency, is having massive success. There have now been 5 other people that want to do the same thing, and there's probably 6 more in that room that now want to do the exact same thing. I looked at Matt and I said, here's the deal. Your story of being successful is going to make us millions of dollars. And at that point, it clicked for him, and he got it. He goes, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Now, in the short term, there was less money. Yeah. But in the long term, those recruits are going to pile in. Those recruits are going to want to come play. All those DBs want to come mentor. I want mentorship under the program because you created a success story. If you help people get what they want, you might lose in the short term. Yeah. But in the long term, you win big.
There's a really good report that it comes out. It's called the Hampton Report, and they did a year-end survey. It's like a big founder group. I'm not associated with them, but I read the reports, and they interviewed business owners. Based on, and they classified them based off like what industry they worked in and where they had a business, but also what their net worth was. Like net worth from like as low as under $1 million all the way up to over $100 million.
Oh wow!
And there's something that you said there that made me think about this, and it was how they think about their investment strategies. And it was like sub $1 million they're thinking about investing this year. Mm-hmm. It's like, what's 2024 look like for my investment? And it's like if it's 5 to 10 million, they're thinking about what's my 3 to 5 year. And at a $50 million net worth, they're thinking about 10 to 20 years. And a $100 million net worth, they're thinking about 100 years.
Damn.
And so like...
Not even them. They're thinking about the tax strategies of passing it down.
They're thinking about the tax strategies of their grandchildren. Like that's what they're thinking about. And I felt like that was powerful. It's aligned to what you're saying, but there's a power in that of like, what is the long-term strategy here? And I do not think any business owner is really thinking about that or their own investment strategy, and completely changed the way I thought about my own investment strategy when I read that report of like, I know the value of compound interest, but like, how do I think about extrapolating that over the next 100 years?
So to underscore, dude, first of all, I love having conversations with you, man. I just so appreciate you being on here, and I'm fired up right now. It's probably I've only had 1 cup of coffee. That's true organic energy right there, man. You freaking bring the phoenix out for me. I was playing golf with a guy who was a billionaire 2 months ago, and we were talking about investments. And he was talking to me about the investment enhancements, and he was talking about the investment strategy that they put together of why he can't sell his business because of step-down tax and leaving it to the next legacy.
Right.
He's just thinking so different than everybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody's thinking, oh, well, I get this PE, I'm going to get this offer. If I do this offer, then I can get this multiple. I do this, which is fine, right? But he's already thinking in regards to, well, no, because he's just playing at a completely different level. He's thinking 50 years out, right? And he's having conversations with me about 50 years out on the golf course when we're talking about investments. And I'm just like, he's just in a different game.
Yeah.
To your point, we didn't have a conversation about this year. We didn't talk about the environment at all this year. We didn't talk about anything from a current events or markets or rates or nothing. He's talking about how he's going to leave a legacy for his kids and why it makes economical sense and how he put together this plan. And my mind was blown.
No matter what you do, the environment does not matter. You can only control what you can control. And there's going to be good times in good markets and bad times in bad markets. But at the end of the day, you can only control what you control. And I found that to be true in my career, my life, and anything I do. Yeah. And so I don't think, when an agency uses the excuse of like, it's a bad personal lines market, it's like, it's a bad market for everybody. So was 2008, and there were a lot of millionaires that came out of that. So I'd rather be the one that figures it out than the one that just, wallows in self-pity.
That's the last thing I want to hear is it's such a hard market. And it's just different. Someone's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Someone will figure it out.
And your strategy might be different within the market. But I think about if that billionaire's way over here, right? Think about the personal lines producer that you go on the golf course with, and all they want to talk about is underwriting guidelines and how hard it is. I'm like, dude, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like,
amen.
That's not even that's not a thing, dude. But it's just so funny. It's a reminder
Yeah.
of that navigation of the market. It's not that it doesn't matter. It's not that it doesn't affect your strategy, but when you zoom out far enough, you're looking at different stuff. You're looking at growing your business, and this is just a season within that business.
Yeah. So let's do this because we got to wrap this up, which I don't want to because we don't have to wrap it up. How about that? So I want to talk about this your passion and this investment passion that you have, and this the love of the game, as I guess I would call it, in regards to different M&As and different acquisitions that you've been doing. Tell us a little bit about that, why you love that, what that looks like, and then maybe what you've learned from stepping outside of the insurance space and the tech space to some of just completely random industries and extrapolating the same principles that you've learned with your walks of life to these businesses that maybe you don't necessarily know the industry very well.
Yeah, so it was I always knew I wanted to get in on the financial side. Again, that was more of my background and where I understood. And again, I was super fortunate. We've done really well at Better Agency. We've raised some money. We had done well at those things. And I ran that process as somebody that had never run that process before. And I learned a lot. I've worked with a lot of investment bankers. I've worked with now VC groups.
It's not easy.
Yeah. And as somebody, again, I think I play this role pretty well where I just kind of lean into like being the dumb jock, but at some point, like I actually know what I'm talking about. I try to like come off as hey, maybe I don't really know, but in the background, like I probably don't know because I think I'm a great BSer, but like I'll go find out.
You just rattled off like 15 statistic, 5 of them, like, yeah. Then a couple of them, like, well, I'm going to have to come back to that after we come off air. What is logo retention?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Well, logo retention is it's basically just policy retention. It's versus your revenue retention.
Yeah. So you can play it off, but just hearing you talk, everybody on this podcast knows you know what you're talking about.
I'm a firm believer in that I know nothing, which makes me want to go find out everything.
I love that.
Like I'm a firm believer that I know nothing. And so I'm interviewing VCs and I learn how they think and what are the things like I didn't know some of the things they were asking me, so I just went and figured it out. And so I'm definitely that mentality of like a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. Like I like to jump in, trial by fire. Like I need to learn mistakes hard because that's just a little bit more who I am. So we went through the process with Better Agency. I've done well, and I was it was me, a couple close friends that I'm really close with, that I consider family, and I'm like, let's put our money to something different here. Like, we could put it in real estate. I have my long-term investment accounts the best advice I ever got was from my brother-in-law. And it was like 2013 said, put this much money a year into like a brokerage account and don't look at it. And I put in money every single month. There's a certain amount I try to hit every single year. I've never looked at that account. It's been like 10 years. And so I just know that based off where the market was in 2013 compared to now that account's doing really well. But I have no plans to ever look at that.
I love that.
And I hopefully never do. Like to the point where like our accountant just asked for it to file our tax returns because I got to give him the Charles Schwab statement. And I'm like, hey, I told my wife, I was like, hey, babe, like, can you send the statement?
You
I've literally have never, I don't know.
You won't look at it.
I've never looked at it.
That's like, I've never bought a lot. It's the point to where you just won't do it out of principle.
Yeah. Well, I take advice seriously. And so like my brother-in-law works for Fisher Investments, one of the top, fiduciary, whatever they do. I don't know. And anyways.
Great commercials.
Yeah. They have great commercials.
Good marketing.
I have a funny story. We could talk off air on that. But his best advice was like, hey, just put in, try to hit, the best financial advice I got was like, try to get 10 grand into that every single year, do that for 20 years, have a couple million to retire on. And so I was like, I took that to heart. I was like, I'm going to put in money every single month, like a bill, like it was my own mortgage. And we're just going to do that every single month. I've never looked at the account in 10 years. I have no plans on ever. And hopefully that's just like a backup plan that I never even think about, that it just gets passed down. I never even have to pull from it. But
it's amazing.
Yeah, I want to stop you, dude, because you talk about how this translates and how you pick up and do things that you've never done before, like tech, and we talk about finance. It's because you seem like you find somebody that knows what they're talking about, and they tell you to do something, you do it.
Yeah,
right?
I'm just willing to try it. Like, and not everything has worked out, but like I'm willing to, I'm willing to do some research and then listen and try it. And if it passes my gut check or not, like if you tell me something and it just doesn't pass my sniff test, I'm gonna be like, bullshit, But like, if it makes sense to me, if I can like get there, I don't need to know the exact way to get there. But if I can get from like A to, Z and I take my own path to get there, then yeah, I'll buy into it. I'll try it.
But the one thing that I'd underscore to that I'd notice is that in everything that you've done, your action threshold is low.
Yeah.
A lot of people have this high action threshold and they're just not able to get into activity mode because they just need to know everything. They need to feel good. They need to feel, all this different things in order to take the step. Entrepreneurship and high level achievers, extraordinary humans, in my opinion, of what I've seen, they have low action thresholds and they just get busy. And so it's the same thing with that. It's like, cool, that makes sense. Let's do it.
It's not for everybody, and I can acknowledge that. But my risk tolerance is high. And I think it's because I've been super fortunate in my life. I'm not going to pretend that I haven't been. Like, I got to play in the NFL. I've made a good amount of money. I've done different things like that. And I think everybody has their own definition of like what's a good amount of money. But like, I think for me is like, listen, like I grew up we didn't turn the lights on at night to go to the bathroom because you'd see all the cockroaches. Like I grew up that way, right? Like me and my wife had talked about it. Like when I came out of the NFL, she's like, hey, just give up the dream and come home. And like, if we live in a 1-bedroom apartment for the rest of our life, like that'll still be home. It doesn't matter. Right, so I have a supportive spouse that's like, what, if we lose everything, it's all good.
Amen to that.
Also, it helps that she's a French citizen and we'll just go back to a socialist country and we can just go do that. So there's a little, there's some perks.
So you're saying having an exit strategy.
Yeah, there is always an exit strategy, but I guess, but no, like, it is the mentality of like, I would rather try and, oh man, I saw a quote earlier this morning. It was something like, like a regret is harder to deal with than failure. And it's like, I would rather just not, I don't ever want to regret. So like, I'd rather just go for it. And like, if we lose everything, then it's like, I just look at it as like Einstein trying to figure out how to like create a light bulb. It's like, well, I learned one way not to do it. Let's try it again. Like, I'll never not try. Yeah. So like my first the first business I ever invested, I actually bought it. I didn't even invest in it. I bought a nail salon because it was available. It hit some criteria. Like I didn't know anything about a nail salon.
So you had data charts and data sets that were important to you. You had specific thresholds, which was good or bad, and it checked the boxes. You had this global universal language of business, but didn't know anything about the industry, but the fundamentals made sense. And so you were choosing the business based on fundamentals, not necessarily the type of business it was.
Correct. And so we evaluated, I just underwrote it based off that and said, this will probably take us on average 2 to 3 hours a week to manage. And so we bought a nail salon and then 6 months later bought another one. And then that turned into 3. And we actually just sold our portfolio. We closed on it. We sold that portfolio on Monday.
Congratulations.
Wow. I was going to ask how it went. So that was a total success.
It went really well.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we closed on that on Monday. So
how many did you get
to? We got to 5. And then I had 3 that we were about to add to the portfolio that I'm flipping to another investor. So
congratulations.
Yeah, congrats, man. That's gotta be fun.
That's parlayed into we own a route of ATM machines that spans from Southern California all the way to Denver. We own something like 500 plus ATM machines. I'm a minority investor in that deal, but like our group, we either go in as partners or we buy the whole thing and put an operator in place. So I have a whole thesis around either now we have a whole process where we go and source and try to find good opportunities for investments for people that are looking to buy businesses. And then we usually co-invest as a minority partner, or we buy the deal straight up and we go and source the operator that we want to put in place. And I'm usually looking for like ex-athletes or ex-military because they tend to think the way I do. And I like working with, people that think, have that kind of drive. And so we're closing on 2 deals right now. One's a boring, I think I was telling you earlier, one's a boring and drilling company out in North Carolina. I obviously know nothing about that space, but it makes sense, and we like the team. And we're actually helping an investor buy that, and we're going to be a minority investor in that deal. And then we're closing on a large one. It's an electrical engineering company in South Carolina. Similar deal. We'll be a little bit more of a majority partner on that deal, but we're doing electrical engineering. And then we have another one that we're working on that's a steel erection company up in Nevada. That's a pretty large deal.
Dude, how fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you find that sort of business in North Carolina being in Scottsdale?
How did I find that? I just through connections. I try to talk to a lot of people. I try to make a lot of friends. I do have a whole one of the things we learned from the tech space was outbound sales. And so I was like, all right, well, what if I just took the same technique of sourcing data, running outbound emails and outbound phone calls with a team, and applied that to types of businesses that we're looking for? I'm really big on the I have a whole investment thesis around the infrastructure space, because not that we have to get into politics here, but there's $1 trillion investment into our infrastructure in this country, no matter whether it's a Republican or Democratic led. There's $1 trillion investment coming. So I'm really big on anything that has to do with infrastructure. So drilling, manufacturing, excavation, anything like that. And so I kind of started targeting some of those industries, running that process, and realized there's a lot of guys that are in their 50s and 60s that have built up these really nice $5, $10 million, $15 million. That steel erection company, I think, is $30 million in revenue. Types of businesses that are like, hey, yeah, I'd be willing to start taking a back seat, bring on a new operating partner, and I have relationships in the banking investment realms, and so we help raise the debt and bring an investment through our fund, usually as a minority partner in it, and help source the operating partner as well.
That's amazing.
I also
so cool, dude.
think it's so fun to hear all you have going on and how big of a scale, but then to know that you also come back to the fundamental. If we lost everything, we didn't lose everything, because we could live at such a low point. So all this is fun. All this is gravy. All this is stimulating, but I don't need it. I may pursue it and I want it, but I think those dancing together are important for entrepreneurs to deal with.
It is a lot of fun, and I genuinely enjoy it. And I think I think having kids kind of puts everything in perspective a little bit, because I realize my kids love nothing more than for me to go out in the backyard and throw them in the bounce house. Okay, the bounce house is $300. Okay, I have a bounce house. If that's their favorite thing. If I lose everything, I can go buy a $300 bounce house and we're
live
good.
in that bounce house.
Yeah, and we're good.
It goes back to what I said as you were finishing your football story. I mean, we're talking about 10-year span. You talk about all the things you've done, what you got going on, and what your eyes are set on. It's just crazy to me how the principles that made you good in football, that when you 0-star recruit, get to where you got to the league, step away gracefully, get into business, zero acumen, as you put it, right? 0-star recruit really, but just had a hunger, had an infinity for finance, and how you've just parlayed that. I mean, through probably outworking everybody in the room, probably through and you say if we lose it all, we just learned a way not to do it. So to me, it's just attitude, man. It's like do whatever you want to do to me. I'm gonna get something out of this, even if it doesn't mean the ultimate reward being money or whatever you're after.
Yeah,
it's like even if I learned something through a loss, I've still won at such a high level. Couple that with hard work. Couple that with a decade of 10,000 hours in multiple things. It just fascinates me, man. I look at you and I look at the foundation of this podcast. It is exactly what we set this podcast up for.
Yeah, it's just so fun to hear stories of stair-stepping your way to where you are today. It doesn't happen overnight. I hear love of the process, love of the game, love of the grind, love of the 6 a.m. workout. In business, there's 6 a.m. workouts, man.
This week it's been at 3:30 for me, because it was a busy week and I had to come out here for a couple of days. So this whole week that's why I have no patience for people that don't want to take their health seriously. I think there's nothing more important than their health, and they say they don't have time. It's like, I don't have time for certain things because they don't matter as much as the things that matter, which is my health and my family.
Say it
so
loud.
I was up every day this week at 3:30. And that's just the way it had to be this week.
It is what it is, right? You didn't say, I got to get up and I'm not going to do my workouts.
No, I say I get to get up.
Yeah.
And that was a little thing that I learned that changed a lot for me. It's like I get the privilege of getting up at 3:30 to go do
we
some
choose
of
all
these
this.
Yeah.
You've chose this route for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ordinary people find excuses. Extraordinary people find reasons, right? There's a reason why that's important.
Yeah.
So, and there's just maybe the other things you don't get those done, but that was one you're not going to let go. So
Right.
that's a mindset, and that's a shift. And I feel like it's what's the saying? How you do something is how you do everything. And I feel like how you do that, I see that in all of your different layers of your career and how you approach your life and your business. So, man, Will, I know I speak for these guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. I know you flew here today. We're going to have some fun tonight, go to dinner, and maybe you'll tell us some of the funny stories you want to tell us on air. But I know from the bottom of our hearts, I just want to say thank you for the friendship. Thank you for sharing so openly. I know I took a lot away from this episode and just your story. So any last parting words in regards to maybe the viewers at home on what you would leave them with, or maybe something you would tell your younger self coming through the ranks?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I love you guys. So
too, buddy. Love you,
I really
man.
appreciate being here. No, I don't have like any like one-liners or anything like that. I think, the thing that I realized as I've gone through this is like, I just try to spend more time and invest more into people. And at the end of the day, just spending more time investing into like love and relationships, I think is going to mean more when I'm older than any kind of like money or anything I got to do. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that's the most important thing is like just dream and love and just try to lean into that more than, things essentially.
Yes, that's so good, man. What a great way to end, man. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show, man. Super, super happy that you're here. We're gonna have some fun tonight, but for all of you listening at home, if you have not subscribed to the podcast, number one, share this episode because it could change somebody's life and be extraordinary.
Thanks for having me, man.